guys, today I'm going to be doing an overview on everything I've done to my 2003 V8 Toyota 4Runner. It's actually been since May of 2019 since I last did an update and overview video like this, and since it's currently January 2021, it's been quite a while since then, and this video is being published on a different channel than that original one. Because of that, I'm going to go ahead and cover everything I've done to this vehicle. Now let's start with the basics of what it takes to get a vehicle to look like mine. We'll talk about my lift and my wheels and tires. For tires, I'm running 265/75 R16 BF Goodrich KO2s in load range E, which I chose to do load range E simply because I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of fuel economy and ride quality in order to get more reliability out of the tires with regards to not having to worry about punctures nearly as much on the trail. For wheels, I have Pro Comp 69 series 16x8s. These wheels are an excellent look in my opinion, a very classic look, similar to your typical stamped steel wheel, but with the advantages of lightness and corrosion resistance of an aluminum wheel. However, I do not recommend them for a 4th gen application. Mine does have the smaller brakes, so 16s do fit, but the clearance between the face of the wheel and the caliper was too little, and I actually had to put on 1/4-inch wheel spacers, which required getting longer wheel studs. I used ones from a Toyota Matrix. I'll include the part number in the description in case you're curious, but overall I don't recommend it. It's way too much effort just to fit these particular wheels. There's definitely a lot of other options that would accomplish this task. For lift, I have Bilstein 5100 series shocks, front and rear. The fronts are set at the 1.75-inch notch, which leveled the vehicle perfectly. And as additional lift, I have a 1-inch body lift. My 4Runner is an SR5 trim level, but using parts from limited and sport models from the junkyard, I've been able to add a lot of neat features, including these heated and color matched mirrors, an auto-dimming interior mirror, and these heated leather seats, which only required a couple patches on the driver's seat and look great for 250,000 miles. I did have to do a lot of work and research looking through OEM wiring diagrams in order to get the heated functions working, but I think it was very worth it because now they're wired up in the OEM way, which is reliable and has been an extremely nice convenience to have. Other interior mods include the radio, which is a Pioneer T1807 that came out of a junkyard Scion TC. This radio loses my cassette deck, which I kind of like because I do actually listen to a lot of cassettes, but the big upgrade was that it added aux capability. I had to add a couple pins to the OEM plugs behind the dash from the original radio, and then I could easily hook up this aux port. It doesn't fit perfectly into the switch blank in the center console, but it wedges in there tightly. I was also lucky enough that my 4Runner came pre-wired with the wiring for an inverter, so I just had to get the couple of components from a junkyard 4Runner and snap and bolt them into place in order for mine to have a 115 volt inverter. In addition, I got these OEM floor mats off Amazon. They were pretty cheap, and while they don't have as much coverage as a Husky Liner or WeatherTech, they work great for the price and protect the carpet from the majority of the crap from my feet. Around back, I installed the trailer hitch from a 2004 and newer V8 4Runner, and from my understanding this is the only difference that was added in later years, which bumps the towing capacity up by 2,000 pounds. Even if that isn't necessarily the case, I feel way more confident with this hitch for doing hard off-road recovery since it's bolted to the frame in 3 locations. Coming around front, I have this flat piece of steel sticking out of my front bumper. This is where I mount my dune flag. It comes right through this hole in the front bumper lower grille and bolts to the stock crash bar. It's been pretty sturdy and I haven't had any issues with the flag being mounted here. Peeking underneath the bumper, I've got these bright red Apex Overland recovery points. They are way stronger than the stock tie-down loops on the radiator crossmember, and I 100% trust these doing an off-road recovery. In addition, they also space the sway bar down about 1/4 inch, which is great for clearance when you have a lift kit. Other than the frame side rear axle link mounts, I have got no aftermarket armor on this vehicle currently. As you can see from the stock skids, they're pretty beat up and I really should upgrade, but at this time that's not in the cards. While they are becoming less and less popular, I do have a CB installed on this vehicle and I do still think they're a very useful modification to have. I used an RCI or CBI, I can't remember exactly, ditch light bracket on the passenger side to mount the antenna. I'm just using a 4-foot fire stick with a spring and a quick disconnect, and inside the vehicle the CB is mounted inside the center console. This is a little bit of an inconvenient location for when you're actually using the CB, because if you get a lot of interference all of a sudden, you can't easily reach the dials to adjust your squelch or volume. However, it is out of the way for daily driving, so in my opinion it's a worthwhile compromise. Pretty soon I'm going to be adding a GMRS radio because that's the direction the four-wheel drive club I'm in is going, but I'll definitely still be keeping the CB for general use. I have my CB mounted in the center console there with holes drilled in the bottom for the wires to run through. I have an auxiliary speaker mounted here in this little, otherwise pretty useless cubby in the center console, and I have the mic mounted to the dash right there. One of the things I get asked about the most with this vehicle is my frame swap. In August of 2019, I replaced the entire chassis due to rust issues with my original chassis. I could have repaired the original chassis, but the effort and future issues with more rust holes forming wouldn't have been worth it in my opinion compared to the effort and cost that went into replacing the frame. I used a frame from a 2004 V8 two-wheel drive 4Runner that actually suffered a transmission failure. I acquired the frame through East Coast Toyota Restorations, and I was able to pick that up from Georgia just driving down in my dad's Tacoma and bringing it back with the U-Haul trailer. Overall, the swap took 14 days to complete in a home garage, including borrowing a friend's garage for a couple days to use the lift to lift the body off. While I was in there, I generally cleaned up and repainted a lot of things, made sure everything was installed exactly as it should be, correct torque specs, etc. I also replaced all of the suspension bushings with Energy Suspension polyurethane bushings. Between those and the low D tires and the Bilstein 5100s, you can guess the ride's kind of harsh in this thing, and it sort of is going down the road. But honestly, it's not that bad, and it's way, way better than stock going through the whoops and over the ruts off-road. I do have a lot of video footage from when I was doing that frame swap, but it's mostly just sort of set the camera up in the corner and let it roll, so it's a lot of time-lapse kind of stuff. I've been meaning to put together a video of that, but it's turning out to be a lot more work than I expected because I'd like it to be an actually useful resource. So I'm going to be doing a lot of voiceover stuff and extra explanations so that when you watch the video it actually is something useful instead of just a time lapse of people zipping around the garage doing random things. While the cost and time that went into the frame swap was a huge setback on the build, I think it was super worthwhile because now this is a very solid platform to build off of. It has over 202,000 miles now, but it runs super great, and overall, now that I've rebuilt the whole undercarriage, it is super solid. To address another question I get a lot, should you frame swap your rusty 4Runner? It comes down to a pretty simple equation in my opinion. You need to figure out how much effort you're going to put into doing the frame swap and figure out how much that effort is worth to you. Figure out how much it's going to cost you just in the materials to do the frame swap. Obviously the big cost is going to be the frame, but you're probably also going to run into a lot of body mount bushings and bolts and other things like that that have to be replaced. You may even have to cut your stock control arms off and replace them entirely. So the cost can get pretty high. And then you take into account what the vehicle would be worth in its current rusted condition, which frankly is probably scrap value. You add all those up and you find out, is that number high enough that you could buy yourself a reasonable replacement vehicle? So then what you'll do is take the sell value of your vehicle in its current condition, plus the cost that it's going to take you to put into it, and that's all the money that you would have available to spend on a replacement vehicle. If that's not going to get you a vehicle that's any better than the 4Runner you would end up with at the end of all that work, I think it's worth doing that work. In many cases, that's going to end up actually being a pretty cost-effective way to get a really nice vehicle, assuming you can do most, if not all, of the work yourself. For the frame swap, the only specialized piece of equipment, in my opinion, that you really need is a lift to get the body off the frame. There's other ways you can do it at home in your driveway, and I tried a few of those. Overall, it was pretty sketchy. I wouldn't recommend it. I highly recommend finding a buddy in a local four-wheel drive club or something like that that will let you borrow their lift. What I did was I took my vehicle, once I had pretty much everything disassembled that I could, I got a U-Haul trailer, brought it across town to a buddy's garage, lifted the body off, put the chassis back on that trailer, brought it home, swapped everything over to the new chassis, and then I brought the new chassis back to his house, dropped the body on, brought it back to my house, and wrapped up the project. This way it was out of his hair as much as possible, but it also gave me the convenience of having the body lifted off in a safe and controlled manner. That's pretty much everything there is to know about my 4Runner right now. I'm sure I missed a couple things, and I've certainly got a lot planned for the coming years. Hopefully that video was interesting and maybe gave you some ideas for things to do to your own 4Runner. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more content.